Hi, this is Vincent Hammer from ExoCAD. This video is just going to go over the changes to partialCAD Rijeka from the perspective of a traditional partialCAD workflow. So all of the big new features to do partials with multiple parts, with multiple wax objects, that's not covered here. There are a lot of cosmetic improvements to the UI, which I don't think I need to go over. And also, if you're in wizard mode, the changes should not be very apparent. Most of the changes, there's a few changes you can access in wizard mode, but most of the changes you'll see in expert mode. Let's see. So the first thing, if we go to expert mode, actually let's apply the survey quick first. The first thing that you'll notice is that tools appear to be missing. No, in fact, they're not. We used to have an edit wax and edit blockout tool, which is basically the same thing operating on a different volume. We've now just made that one thing that's edit wax with an edit blockout mode, right? So, and again, from the wizard perspective, the user doesn't know that it's the same tool with a mode now. It's just, it automatically puts them in the right mode at that, whatever the wizard step is that they're at. You'll also notice that we only have a mesh connector tool. Before we had mesh connector, a mesh tool, and a connector tool. And the mesh tool and connector tool basically had the same functionality as the combined mesh connector tool. It just became, with all the new features that we had, it became too much of a headache to keep all of that stuff separate. So we just have one tool. And again, in wizard mode, whether or not you're creating a connector or mesh is automatically set. So somebody just breezing through the wizard will not notice, should not notice a big difference. You will notice that there's an extra thing here. It's disabled by default unless you're in a quick snap workflow for making a bottom part. Let's see, and then as far as the tool palette goes, the other thing you'll notice is there's a new tool called Assemble Parts. For traditional partials, that's not relevant. Okay, so let's see. So we still have these tools like the Edit Wax, the Clone, and the measure tool. They all still have their blockout mode, which you can access in a similar way that you did before. But the big change is that you can, in expert mode, if you want, you can change what you're editing in the object list. And this is a long-standing request that people want to be able to set the blockout or even set the refractory as the active volume that they're editing on. So yes, I can in fact make this make the refractory active, and I can basically edit the refractory now. I mean, it's not something that comes up often, but it's occasionally somebody wants to do that. But for traditional partialCAD workflows, if you wanted to edit blockout, you could in the smooth tool change it here, but you could also just change it directly here in the wax parts in the show hide group. And as a consequence, that means that any tool that you use now will be in blockout mode, right? So you can make a pipe in blockout. Not that you'd want to, but basically it just shows you you set that you're editing the blockout or editing the refractory, and everything you do will now be applied to the blockout or refractory. Okay, so that's really all you need to know about that. So let's take a look. So I mentioned that the mesh and connector tools are gone. So another thing that's new is in the mesh tool is this mesh rim, right? So this will put a rim around the mesh based on the thickness you set here. Other than that, I don't think there's a big difference. We have this automatic finish line, but again, automatic finish line only works if you have a imported gingiva. The cropped apart also is only relevant if you have other wax objects in the quick snap workflow. All right, and then in the connector, it's the same. Okay, in the gingiva or bottom part, there's also nothing that matters. Okay, so basically the main thing here is that we have the rim around the mesh, and then there's two other things. So you notice here that we have presets now. In the clasp, finish line, and bar tool, we have this ability to edit a profile. You would go in here, not change your profile, just do a save as. And then you'd have a copy of the same profile with this different setting. So if I go back to the defaults for the interior, I get that. And now I can have my own one, which is where here. And that has the new default that I just added using the same profile. So we extended this this ability to just save parameters to both the mesh connector tool, right? So let's I'll make some changes here, and I'll go here and I'll save this test parameter. I don't know if and now it's available the presets are available here. You can go back to the system defaults, and you can go over to your new parameters that you created. Okay, so that allows you to create different presets. Since we have so many settings here, I think that will probably be quite useful. Also, many people have asked for the same kind of control and save for build, where you have the same mechanism, where you can also save your own save for build settings. The other new thing that we have here is the cut view. It's also something we added for the quick snap workflow, but it's also useful for traditional partials. So this is a sort of lightweight version of the more elaborate version in DentalCAD and the ExoViewer. But it's just enough so that you can preview stuff, slices of stuff in partialCAD. Okay, so the way that the cut view works, it doesn't have the advanced placement of DentalCAD where you know where the arch is and then it very nicely follows along the arch. It's a little simpler in partialCAD. It will just basically, you have this eye icon which basically locks it to the screen. So if you want to look at the particular areas of the partial, the easiest way to go about it is to use the view shortcut keys. It's F2, F3, F4, F5. So F2, and if you want to do the other side of F2, you do Shift F2, and then I just hit this eye icon again, and now I can just go in this window and drag, and then I can use this slider to move along the object. Okay, so there's a couple of extra features as well in here. So if you want to do a measurement, you can just click and drag. If you want to do multiple measurements, you can do Control click and drag, and it will just keep track of your measurements that way. Okay, so those are some features that might be useful. So if you're in Save for Build, let's just apply the build quick. So the cut view icon is currently available in Save for Build and Mesh Connector. We can probably make it available. We probably will just create a button here eventually, so it's available from everywhere. But so in in Save for Build, you basically have the same thing with meshes. They're just shown as a line as opposed to the wax, which is shown as a volume. Yep, and so basically everything works in here, and it's quite nice. The thickness works in here as well. Okay, let's see. So yeah, also Save for Build has the UI is quite different, but everything is more or less the same still. So settings, we now have 2 panels to clean things up a little bit. You'll notice we're actually showing what the default values are in green, so it's a little more clear. But as far as all of these different options, they're the same as before. The UI layout is just a little bit different. So also notice here, this is now a checkbox for auto relief. If you have that on and you do apply build, it does the auto relief and goes straight to apply for build. If you have it off, then you can apply it manually. And the difference, actually, let me just quick create a major connector. I'm doing a major connector because it has a more obvious relief area under it. Okay, so let's see. Let's apply the relief. Okay, so this eyeball icon is to look at the auto relief. So it's basically inspecting the blockout. It's basically another blockout mode tool. And then notice also we have this, and this was also before in this settings panel. We have an undo relief and a redo relief. Now the reason we have that is if you create the relief and you're going to look at it, we expect you to probably edit it and make changes to it. If you don't, there's no difference, obviously. But if you do make changes to it, let's do something a little more obvious. Yeah. So if you do make changes to it, and you go back here, this undo will undo everything you did after the relief. So it'll basically roll back all your undo steps till you were at the point where you applied the relief, right? Otherwise, if you just did a regular undo, you'd have to undo every single step until you got to auto relief. Okay, so now the relief hasn't been applied, obviously. Okay, I think that's it. Let me just quick check. Oh, sure, yes, I forgot the imported parts. Okay, so you could click on the Add Part tool here, and you could also click here and import from any other tool. It does exactly the same thing. Okay, Okay, so to access the file, either this import or that import does the same thing. And in the data folder, I added just a cube and a sphere, really basic object, just so you can have something to play around with initially. Okay, so I made another video. I might make an update of that, how you can make a Gothic arch, so where you're basically importing some large objects. You have the ability to move objects around. And your friend, when you're doing this, because it's a very basic placement tool, is to use the F2 through F5 shortcuts. That way you can keep track of where you're placing things. And it's really just for very basic placement, because all of the sophisticated placement is happening in dentalCAD with the teeth and everything. It's just so if there's some other objects you want to add to the partial, or you have some completely different workflow where you just want to place some objects, you have the ability to do that now. Let's import one additional object here, just to quick show you that you can move them independently. Oops, there we go. Yep, okay. All right, so you can select them on screen, which one is active. You can control click them both active. And then you can set how they're going to be imported. Let's see, this is all the same as in Galway, basically, except with a slightly different UI. Let me just show you the hollow wax feature, because that one is also different from Galway. So if you were to have a, let's just click the sphere, make that active, and let's make it a little bit smaller to pretend it's a tooth. So the way the hollow wax worked before, it was sort of like a non-editable mode, where you'd select that you wanted it to go to hollow wax, and at the very end, it's save for build. It would only then add it to the partial, and then basically punch a hole through the bottom to make it hollow and open on the bottom. But we've changed that, and instead of doing that at the end, we just convert the inside to Blockout, which basically has the same effect. And it has the advantage that you can now see what you're doing. We also had cases of people who wanted the hollow tooth, and then they wanted to open one side of it. And so that kind of allows you to do that. So let's see, let's apply selection. Okay, and so this is another good case to have the cut view. Yeah, so notice also that meshes are represented as outlines, whereas the voxels are represented as volumes. They're solid. All right, so here you see how that inside went to Blockout. Let's see, is there anything else I need to tell you about this? I don't think so. Let's just do the apply for build, and then look at how the cut view changes depending on that. So you should see an outline. Okay, so there it is. You have your hollow object here. Okay, so that basically goes over all of the new features. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. Always happy to help. And that's it. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.